Hello, twisted humans. Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting? Then this is the podcast for you. I'm Alicia. And I'm Sierra, and this is Twisted and Uncorked. Welcome to episode 147, part 2. Fun things going on today. Not really. But before we even do fun facts, I had a revelation today.
Okay.
I was driving in my car, and suddenly the perfect term for a group of Mothmen came to my mind.
Stop it. Okay, tell us what it is.
A Molly.
Okay, explain.
A Molly of Mothmen. First of all, I think it just sounds good.
Cute,
right?
Yeah.
But also, Molly means many things. It was a doting nickname for young girls in the early 1900s or 1800s or something.
Yeah.
It's a drug.
Lunette,
but it's also
Molly.
Yeah. It's also a term for an effeminate male. So a male who acts very feminine. And I was like, yeah, that's perfect.
That is
Molly
very
of Mothmen.
perfect. A Molly of Mothmen. I like it. I like it a lot. I don't remember what mine was.
I don't either.
Listen last week, guys, and let us know what it was. Yeah, that's a really great. Where did you learn that Molly meant that for men? Was it in a book?
Googled. No, I literally, I was just driving down the road, and Molly of Mothmen, it literally just came to my mind. Okay. And so I Googled, what does Molly mean? And I found all of these definitions. I was like, yeah, that works.
That almost it wasn't in itself kind of acts as a fun fact too. I feel like you did this on purpose.
It wasn't like I was out like, oh, Molly's cool, or like, oh, Molly means this. That would be cool for Mothmen. No, it just came to my brain, Molly of Mothmen. And I was like, what does that even mean? And so I looked it up.
I mean, curious minds, guys. You should see the things that I Google in a workday alone. I don't even want to. I hope that my boss never checks my Google history. That would be a mistake.
Fun fact for next week is a real good reason why I hope no one ever checks my Google history. But I can't do that fun fact today because it's too fun, and this episode is not that kind of fun. So it'll have to be next week. Sorry, guys.
Fair.
Come back and listen.
Fair. This is part 2 of Shelly Knotek, in case you're not caught up, or in case you are brand new here and this is your first episode. The people at my yoga studio, back it up one more. I was talking about my podcast she's the receptionist at my yoga studio. Her name is Brianna. And she's like, all I listen to is true crime. What's it called? And I was like, Twisted and Uncorked. If you don't like it, please don't tell me. I will cry. No, I was joking.
To gain some confidence.
She's sweet. You know, I think it's...
What the fuck?
Oh my God, Kevin.
I was like, what is happening right now?
Your face changed, and I was like, what?
Jesus.
I just care so much about this show. So, well, it's an extension of us. So, of course it would. But my fun fact is still fun. I did the opposite because I was like, well, we're only going down from here. So, might as well start with something.
But in the next episode, mine is cute too for today. In the next episode, when I tell you that fun fact, you'll understand why it wasn't that kind of.
Okay. Yeah. Why it wasn't appropriate. Yeah. Surprise, guys. We're recording 2 episodes today.
Yeah. Appropriate is the exact right word.
Okay. So as most of our listeners know from episode 1, Friends is one of our favorite shows of all time. And my fun fact today is a little blurb about the show. So Rachel's haircut in seasons 2 and 3 were the most popular haircuts of the 90s. Everybody went into a salon and asked to look like Rachel Aniston from Friends. Well, the hair was
Jennifer
cut.
Aniston.
Yes.
Rachel Green.
Yes. Did I say Rachel Aniston?
Yeah. You just merged them. You went too fast.
And she had her hair cut for the show for the character, and she hated it. She thought it was fucking hideous.
Oh my
She
gosh.
says, she talks about it in interviews, and she's like, I am very happy that I was influential to all of these people and that, you know, they wanted to be like me in some way. But honestly, it wasn't a good haircut. And I was like, I think it's cute. I think it's a cute haircut.
I think it was an amazing haircut, and I think all of the 90s agrees with that. I mean, it wasn't, I'm sure that her character had a lot of influence on it.
Of course.
But that was like the 90s. Like that's what the 90s looked like.
I know. I kind of want that haircut to come back because I keep contemplating chopping my hair off, and I think I could pull it off.
I've been thinking about getting my hair cut at least trimmed, but I don't like short hair on me. So
have you ever had short hair?
In the military.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen a photo of you with short hair. You saw my like awkward short hair length and you said that was cute because that was it starting to grow out a little bit. I'll share some photos with you. You can help inspire me because currently my hair is down to my belly button and is a pain in my ass. So
my fun fact is way cuter.
Okay. Tell me your fun fact.
Thanks to the internet, amazing things can happen. All right. 2 men, one from New Zealand, the other from Spain. They went to precise coordinates, New Zealand and Spain, so that they would be directly on the other side of each other. One was
so cute.
Negative 36.86377. The other was positive 36.86377.
Okay.
And they each put a piece of bread on the ground to make an earth sandwich.
I love that so much.
And it is only possible because of the internet. Because they were able to FaceTime each other.
Did they know each other?
Are you there? Are you there? I don't know if they knew each other, like had met in person or they met online, but they decided to do this on like a FaceTime video call. There's a picture of them.
That's so
making
cute.
An earth sandwich.
Yeah, I don't know how to transition now. I've used it up.
You know what goes great with sandwiches? Sangria.
There you go. Guys, if we ever win a podcast award, it's going to be for the best segues. I know it. Today, we are drinking a sangria with our Nikki Rosé from last week. And because I had grapefruit and basil and ginger ale, I was like, you know what? Those things all go great together. Let's muddle them up. They do. You wouldn't think that they would, but they do.
Grapefruit and basil.
And
and ginger.
Like ginger ale. Sweeter. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like a little bubbly. And then I added citrus vodka as well, just to elevate, you know, the grapefruit. And I'm loving it. I think it was really good.
Okay.
My initial sip at the beginning of this episode, if you watch on YouTube, was displeased and I spilled everywhere. But it's growing on me. I learned last summer how much Sierra and I love putting basil in sangrias. Mm-hmm. So I didn't remember if we'd ever tried grapefruit and basil together. And it surprisingly works. Are you drinking anything?
I am drinking water with apple cider vinegar and lemon juice right now. But I will admit, I was very close to opening a bottle of wine. We have Jesse's aunt gave us a bottle of wine. She let us try it. She had like a whole case of it. She let us try it when we were visiting her. And then she gave us a bottle to bring home. And it is so freaking good that I don't want to open it because I don't want to use it. You know what I mean? Like until I can find it. I went to like 3 different grocery stores today trying to find it so that I'll have a second. I just always want to have one closed. Like I don't want it to run out.
Because it's that good.
It's so good.
Is it from like...
It's from Florida. It's called Lake Ridge Southern Red. And it's really good. And I even told Jesse, I was like, I went looking for that wine and I was really tempted to drink some tonight. He was like, don't, we gotta save it. I was like, I know, but it's so good and I want some.
You got to find something that's like similar that's readily available.
I can order it online, but I'm just nervous. Okay, enough about our drinks and wines. We are going to take a quick break to hear a promo from Prime Time Crime with a K. And after that, we'll get into this crazy story. So, remembering from the last episode, Kathy has just passed. Shelly was in disbelief that Kathy was gone, or at least she pretended to be. She couldn't understand the part that she had played in all of it. She and Dave discussed the next steps, which really meant that he needed to get to work on getting rid of Kathy's remains. Sammy and Nikki were invited to go to a sleepover, so that was a perfect time so that they wouldn't see anything. Shane, however, was dragged into helping Dave. They hauled Kathy's naked, bruised, and bloodied body out to the fire pit by the barn, placed her on the fire pit, covered her in logs, and started a fire. Dave gathered spare tires left on the property and piled those on top of Kathy as a way to mask the smell, and used sheet metal to surround the fire pit and bent it over the top. He thought this would better keep the heat in so that her body would burn and disappear. They kept the fire going for the next 9 hours. And by the next morning, Kathy, as well as all of her belongings that they shoved in there, were gone. Dave had to return to work on Monday, and with Kathy out of the picture, the chores and abuse were dealt right back to Shane and Nikki. One day, Shelly had some large Home Depot buckets and claimed that their dad had burned some insulation in the burn pile. They needed to find any remaining bits and pieces and put them in the buckets.
Which, like, even if they weren't like naive children, insulation fucking burns. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. They both knew that they were not looking for bits of insulation. Shelly had dumped the remnants that they collected into a plastic bag, and Shane was made to double and triple check over the next few days on his own. On Dave's next trip home from work, he managed to get his hands on a backhoe. He took it to the burn area and turned the dirt several times. When he was done, he took the dirt and dumped it along a remote logging road, and he took the garbage bag of what remained of Kathy and that the teens had collected and drove around, scattering those ashes out of the window in different remote areas, ending in the ocean. So, by the way, by this time, like, I'm throughout this whole thing 100% under the impression that had there been no Shelly in Dave's life, he would never have been this person. But this is the point where I'm like, okay, you took it too far. You're literally scattering someone's remains that you just had to burn because of this woman. Like, this is the time. I know you're in too deep, but this is the time where you get out.
Yeah.
This is it. While Dave was busy getting rid of Kathy's body, Shelly orchestrated a believable story. Kathy was already estranged from her family because Shelly made her that way, but she needed to make sure there was a good cover story. After all, the last anyone had heard, Kathy's best friend Shelly allowed her in rent-free in her family home. Shelly found a blurred photo of a woman standing in front of a semi-truck. Shelly claimed that it was Kathy. She said she had met a long-haul trucker named Rocky and fell in love, running away to be with him on the road. Shelly had Nikki forge Kathy's handwriting, explaining that she had run off and was very happy before mailing these letters to Kathy's mother and sister.
The fucked up part about this is that she had Nikki place them in Ziploc bags after she was done.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't give a shit if Nikki's fingerprints were on there.
Exactly. Yeah. Shelly didn't want her own fingerprints on there, but who cares about Nikki's?
She was willing to take her own daughter down. Like, that's so fucked.
Nikki knew that what she was doing was wrong, but she was scared not to do what her mother had asked. Like we just said, Shelly was careful to never touch the letters. put them in Ziploc bags after Nikki signed, wiped them down a bit. Shelly made it very clear that no one could tell what happened to Kathy and that they needed to stick to the Rocky story, frequently quizzing her family on where she was for the next few years. So much so that the kids kind of started to believe the story, wanting it to be the truth. If Shane or Nikki got this story wrong, Shelly would tell them that their siblings would be torn away from them. They'd go to foster care and the family would be ruined. Keeping the family together was the utmost importance to Shelly, and she was not willing to go down for what she believed she had nothing to do with. She used Shane as a scapegoat, claiming that he had been the reason Kathy died anyway. She used him to beat Kathy, so she told him he would be the one who went down for it. After that, she was nervous about Shane. She would say to Dave, "What are we going to do with him?" Dave continued to insist that Shane was a good kid and that he would never do anything to hurt their family. But Shelly remained unconvinced and tried to convince Dave of the opposite. She would blame him on things to make Shane sound bad. Once she even blamed Shane on molesting their baby Tori to
I
prove to
forgot
Dave that
about
he was
that.
bad. She went and grabbed a pair of the baby's underwear and was like, "Look, Dave, look what I found in Shane's stuff. Like, he molested our baby." Like, what the ugh. Again, the Kathy thing is where Dave should have stopped, but this is one of those things where even if he didn't believe that Shane did that, like, first of all, if he did believe that Shane did that, I am more sympathetic to his situation, Dave's. But even if he didn't believe that Shane did that, this is showing Dave how far Shelly is willing to go and making it seem like, okay, I literally have to. Like, she's going this far. It's serious. I have to do this. One evening, after weeks of being berated by Shelly, in February of 1995, Dave got his rifle and walked out to the pipe shed on the property, the same place that Kathy had been kept for weeks on end, to find his nephew, Shane. Shane had his back to Dave when he opened the door, and Dave shot him in the back of the head before Shane could ever know what was about to happen. Dave was hurt by this, but felt that Shelly would never stop until he did it. He got to work cleaning up Shane's blood using bleach and water, and he placed his body in a sleeping bag under his workbench until he could light another fire.
Shane was 17. He was so close to being done and out of there. Like, it's heartbreaking.
The morning after Shane had been murdered, Nikki and Sammy sat in the kitchen before school. Shelly walked in, teary-eyed, holding a birdhouse that Shane had made and a piece of paper. She sniffed a few times before announcing that Shane had run away again. She said he left a note saying he was running away for good and that he loved and appreciated everything that Shelly had done for him. Nikki's alarm bells were already going off. Shane hated Shelly. He would never leave a note or a gift like that for her. She knew he had plans to get out of the house, but they were close and he would have told her about them.
That, and at this point, he was literally sleeping on Nikki's closet floor. He didn't even have his own room. So she would have known if he snuck off and ran away.
Yeah.
It's fucked up.
Shelly piled the kids into the car, like usual, to hunt for him. But instead of the relentless search lasting as long as it took to find her escapee, like usual, the family drove around only for a couple of hours and then returned home. To Nikki and Sammy, it didn't even seem like their mother was looking for Shane. In the days and weeks that followed, Shelly would announce that Shane had called and that he was happy. He had taken a fishing job in Alaska that he had always dreamed of. This is weird for two reasons. One, Shane never mentioned a so-called dream where he goes fishing in Alaska. And two, he only seemed to call when no one else was around.
I mean, so if that's your dream, guys, go for it. But whose dream is that?
I mean, for sure it's somebody's dream, but not Shane's.
Definitely not.
And why would he only talk to Shelly? That would be the last person he would talk
Right? If
to.
anyone, he would have called when he thought only Nikki was home.
Not only is she abusive and ridiculous, she is a master gaslighter. Fucking master.
Like unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah.
This book is traumatizing. I blame Sierra.
It really is. I don't remember why I even suggested this. Probably because I was looking at it or something. I don't know. Sammy was determined to believe Shelley's tall tales. Anything else was just too painful. She loved Kathy greatly and allowed herself to believe that she really was happy with her new lover, Rocky. She allowed herself to trust that Shane was okay and really had run away. Nikki knew better, though. She suspected something dark. With Shane and Kathy gone, Nikki went back to being her mother's favorite target for abuse, locking her outside for hours or even days in the cold. And Nikki, not having Shane to confide in anymore, became very close with Sammy again. Not that they were ever not close, but usually it was like Shane and Nikki talked about adult things and tried to keep Sammy hidden from those things. Now, Nikki only had Sammy to talk to about those things.
That and in part one, Sammy was like spared from a lot of this abuse while
Right.
they were being abused or forced to work or do something horrific. Sammy was like allowed to watch TV with Shelly and like
Right.
hang out.
Yeah. And the crazy thing, and I mean, crazy in a good way, I guess, is Nikki and I think Shane, obviously we don't have his words to weigh in on this book, but it seemed like Nikki was okay with that. She was willing to take the brunt of it for her sister. She didn't want Sammy to be the target. Shelley looked at the relationship between her daughters as a threat, obviously, specifically between Sammy and Nikki. They were older, smarter, and had enough of their mother's abuses. To Shelley, this threat could mean a lack of control, so she did what she could to drive a wedge between Nikki and the two younger girls. She constantly told Sammy and Tori that Nikki was a bad influence and forbade them from talking to her. While the girls knew better than to keep asking about Shane, Laura Watson was less than willing to accept Shelley's excuses. When she would call to talk to him, Shelley would say that he didn't want to talk to her or that she just missed him. She blamed it on him just being a teenager. You know, they're never home. Laura would continue to send him a check as a birthday gift and call for her grandson. Shelley would happily cash those checks and insist he wasn't home.
Again, I love Laura so much.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Finally, she told Laura the same lie that she told the girls, that he was up working on a fishing boat in Alaska. Much like Nikki, Laura knew that if he was out on his own, that he would have found a way to contact her. So Nikki was graduating from high school. She was so excited. All she wanted to do was go to college and get as far away from her mom as she could. She enrolled at Grays Harbor Community College with the hopes of earning a degree in criminal justice. Shelley was not okay with this, though. She needed to continue to control her eldest daughter. The clothes that Nikki bought for her first day of school disappeared, and she was forced to wear the dirty sweats she worked outside in. She was humiliated. Shelley took away Nikki's room and forced her to sleep on the living room floor. This was the same start to Kathy's horrific sleeping arrangements.
I fully believe that if Nikki had stayed in this situation, that Shelley would have killed her.
Shelley also took away Nikki's money and her car, ensuring she would have no way to pay for her classes and no way to get to school. Nikki continued her forced labor around the house and the yard, kind of just trying to keep the peace so her mom would let her fucking go to school. Sometimes Shelley would have her do stuff just for the sake of having her work. And then, after being outside from sunup to sundown, her mom would call her a lazy bitch and tell her she was worthless, with Dave joining in on the insults when he was home. This is one of the things where, had the Kathy thing not happened, I wouldn't be blaming Dave.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a husband or a wife and you worked all day every day, and when you came home the only thing you heard was your significant other, the person you loved, the person you're supposed to trust, telling your child they're worthless and they don't do anything and they're lazy, you probably think that that kid is worthless and lazy and don't do anything. He's not there to see how hard she's working, so I don't blame him too much for this. But still, the Kathy thing happened, so I'm like, dude, that was your biggest red flag.
I would also like to specify for Sierra, she's not saying that it's ever okay to call your
Oh,
kids
fucking
worthless and lazy.
no. Never.
I just sensed an angry mom mob after you for a second there. No,
Fucking
never okay.
God, no.
No.
That is, it's
But
abuse
Dave
anyway.
or like just thinks his kids are bad. Like he has no other reference.
Right, right. He, in his mind, if I was Dave, my mind would be Shelly has been telling this girl, my kid, all fucking day to do something and finally got to this point where she just snapped on her.
Mm-hmm.
So she must have been really awful, you know?
Mm-hmm. At wit's
She
end.
clearly wasn't.
Yeah.
Shelly was, but
Yeah.
but he didn't know.
No.
Although, again, Kathy was the biggest fucking red flag, dude. Anyway.
Absolutely. But and like Dave to me is kind of like Grandma Anna's husband George.
Oh yeah.
Sleeping on the porch, just like working to an early death is what this man is doing. I didn't mention
Probably
this in part 2 at all,
wantingly. Like,
but he would
I hope
pop.
I die soon.
What were
Kind
those
of.
things that he would put in his mouth to stay awake so he could work like 36-hour shifts?
Um, Xanax?
I don't
Not
know what
Xanax,
it was.
Adderall.
Adderall. And
Yeah.
like he would pop those regularly
Yeah.
just to stay even like remotely awake for 36 hours driving there. And so
Yeah.
he's probably not even like coherent enough to
Right.
understand how horrible this behavior is too.
Yeah. And he was so young when they got together that like he feels like this is what normal life is.
Mhm.
This is what it is. I work until I die. I work and give money to my wife who raises my kids until I die.
And goes into debt somehow.
Right. Finally, after being called a lazy bitch and to get a job, Nikki snapped. She screamed at her parents, saying, I can't get a job. Look at me. I have nothing to wear and no way of getting anywhere. Shelly seemed surprised by her daughter's reaction, never having been stood up by her before. And also, probably because Dave was right there and she needed to be like, oh, fuck.
This interaction would have gone differently otherwise.
Yeah. She changed her tone immediately and said to her daughter, if that's all you needed, why didn't you just say something? Bitch.
She's fucking infuriating.
Nikki was growing stronger mentally and physically. She fought back when her mom attacked her and told her to never touch her again. Shelly, continuing her wedge between the girls, announced to Nikki that Sammy did not want her there anymore and she needed to leave, that she was sending Nikki to live with her Aunt Trish. Probably because she was scared that Nikki was going to kill her, because I fucking would have.
Mm-hmm.
Trish lived 4 hours away in British Columbia, Canada, and was Dave's sister, but virtually a stranger to Nikki.
I will take
Nikki. Right. Nikki welcomed it, though. Anything to get away from her mother. She told her aunt that bad things happened at home and that she didn't want to go back. She wasn't specific. She still lived in fear of her mom, but she couldn't go back. Sammy knew why Nikki had left, but Tori was still too young and she was still easily manipulated by their mother. She went from idolizing her big sister Nikki to hating her, Shelly pulling all of the strings. Tori wrote a letter to Nikki one night and placed it on her windowsill. Shelly found it and punched and slapped Tori in the face. She told her youngest daughter that Nikki was no good and that she didn't love her. Again, so much fucking gaslighting. Nikki eventually returned to Washington, but she didn't go home. Instead, she moved into a tent by her father's work site in Whidbey Island. Nikki saw how many hours her father really worked, and while it was admirable and his heart was in the right place, she started to see it as pathetic. Why did he live this way just for Shelly? She didn't understand why he would stay. He was an adult. He could leave. Dave would tell Nikki that it was because of her and her sister that he stayed. Dave and Nikki would go home for a night every week to visit, but Nikki decided she would rather live in the tent and be with her dad than under her mom's roof. If that alone does not speak 1,000 words of the pain and abuse she experienced, I don't know what will. Nikki got a job at Baskin Robbins and a job cleaning motel rooms. The motel owner gave her a use of a double wide trailer on the property. It was shabby, but she was finally free.
Yeah, right. Take it. And kind of ironic because Nick or Shelly and Randy, Nikki's birth dad, lived in a
Started
trailer
that way. Yeah.
for their first little bit together. Interesting. But it wasn't good enough for Shelly. As a reminder, guys, go listen to part 1 if you're confused.
But that's the place Nikki was born into. I mean, probably at a hospital, but
yeah,
that's where she lived.
That was her environment. Yeah.
Yeah. Sammy began to develop a fuck it attitude and was open about what was happening at home when she was reprimanded at school. So she's like, just trying to fucking get ahead, do good things, be a normal human. For example, when she was late for class once, she told her teacher it was because her mom had made her sleep outside. I can totally see, like, my friends from high school doing this, but it being a lie. Like, my fucking mom made me sleep outside. So,
yeah. What are you going to tell me? A dog ate my homework? No, my mom literally did.
Yeah, literally. My mom fed me my homework, actually.
Oh my God. So traumatizing.
Sammy was called into the counselor's office with concerns over what was happening at home. And she realized what her accusations would entail, and she panicked, telling the counselor that she had made everything up. She didn't want the backlash of her mother's anger, and also of her little sister being taken away. When Sammy was set to graduate, as a method to sabotage her from getting away, Shelly intercepted her college admission forms so they were late and not accepted. This did not stop Sammy from planning her escape, though. She had her friends help break into her house and get her things while she was away for a shopping trip with her mom and sister. When they returned home, Sammy made up an excuse to leave the house after writing a note to her sister and never came back. She rotated between her friends and her boyfriend's houses, hiding out, knowing full well her mom was out there looking for her. Nikki told Sammy to just call their grandmother, that she would gladly take her in and protect her. Sammy's boyfriend's mom drove her out to her grandmother's house in Bellingham, where she stayed for the whole summer. Much like Nikki, she was now free, and she did not want to go home ever again. Shelly continued to alienate Tori from Nikki and now Sammy. She made sure she never got any of the letters sent to her from Nikki. Eventually, Nikki moved to Bellingham to be with Laura as well, getting a job at a nursing home with her. But somehow, Shelly found her and had Dave stalk his daughter around town, waiting out in the parking lot while she worked, almost as a threat or intimidation that they were watching. Shelly was terrified that her daughters were out there telling the world the truth about what had happened at their home during their upbringing.
Also, poor fucking Dave being bullied into sitting in a parking lot for hours after he's worked 40 hours in a row. Like,
right.
And he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to scare his kids. Like,
yeah.
What the fuck?
Shelly then had Dave do the same thing to Sammy, except he actually approached her and said that Shelly was worried she needed to come home. Sammy refused. She was finally happy and tired of the lies about Kathy and Shelly's cancer.
Mm-hmm.
This ended up being a nice heart-to-heart moment for Sammy and Dave. Dave, to an extent, is a victim of Shelly's abuse, as we've said. He still did things she told him, which was wrong, but it was out of fear and being beaten down. No matter what Shelly did to him, he never said a bad thing about her. Sammy said she would only come back home if Shelly made things right and got her college paperwork in. Shelly was outraged, coming up with a slew of excuses as to why her daughter couldn't go to college. There was no money. Her and Dave were probably getting divorced. Shelly's cancer had returned.
And to
See,
clarify, she sent in her applications on time, but Shelly destroyed them
right.
so that she couldn't go. Like, that's so fucked
She
up.
literally like intercepted that shit
I was thinking
purposefully.
of everything that like moms and dads do for their kids to have a better future than they had for themselves, and being encouraging and
Literally,
warm. And I'm like, this is the exact fucking opposite.
literally, Shelly wanted the opposite. I, in my own brain, when I'm trying to like,
Plan for
um,
your kids.
no, I mean, obviously the opposite of everything she's doing. But no, when I'm reading through these notes and the book and everything, and I'm like, okay, trying to understand what's happening, trying to basically diagnose Shelly. I honestly think that Shelly was so selfish that she was jealous of her own children.
Mm-hmm.
Like she thought they were prettier than her. She thought they were better than her. And she was jealous of them and didn't want, she wanted to be better than them.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything she could to make them feel worse than she did.
Which is literally the exact opposite of
Yeah.
motherhood. And that's coming from somebody that's not a mom, but I'm a really fucking cool aunt and I want the best for my nieces and nephews. Like, what kind of person thinks this way? Like, I just.
Sammy stood her ground about the only way she was coming home. It did not happen, so she did not come home, but she did keep in contact with Tori often. Sammy and Nikki also remained extremely close, but keeping it a secret from their mother. Sammy called her mother out for her actions, growing stronger just like her sister had. During one argument, Sammy snapped at Shelly about Kathy. She confronted her, screaming that she knew she was dead and that Shelly was responsible for it. Shelly seemed remorseful all of a sudden and actually apologized. The remorse was short lived, though, and Shelley went right back to the land of denial where she could do no wrong. She continued to spend the family's money. She blamed Sammy's school and her cancer treatments, but despite how much Dave was working, they were in trouble. Utilities were threatened to be turned off, yet she continued to write bad checks and build debt behind Dave's back. Worst of all, Shelley stole money from Nikki's account and took out loans in her daughter's names, ruining their credit before they even started. Tori at this time was only 8, so she had a shit credit score at 8 years old. Back at the Knotek home, Sammy and Nikki, both out of the house, Tori begins to endure her mother's sick punishment and abuse. Shelley would hide Tori's homework when she had completed it and make her do it all over again. Shelley once beat Tori with a fishing pole so badly that the pole broke. She would tell Tori she was ungrateful, she should have aborted her. Shelley took away all of Tori's clothes except for a pair of Winnie the Pooh overalls once, so that was all she had to wear to school for weeks, despite that it was cold out. And also, people are mean in school. They
People are
probably
so
bullied the
mean.
shit out of her.
They bullied Nikki and Shane for not being able to shower and coming to school in
Yeah,
the same clothes. They bullied Sammy. Like, why do
it's
you need to
ridiculous.
make your kids' lives harder than they already are in high school?
As Tori got older and started to develop, her mother would demand that she take her top off so she could inspect how she was growing.
Oh, what the fuck?
Tori was embarrassed and protested, but Shelley told her that all mothers did this for their daughters.
No, they don't.
On some occasions, Shelley would even inspect her vagina. She once demanded that she needed a lock of Tori's pubic hair for her baby book, saying that both of her sisters had done it too. Eventually, Tori gave in and was like, oh my God, this is so fucking weird, but fine. Here. And Shelley laughed in her face and called her sick for actually doing it.
This is where Alicia had to shut her laptop and walk away for a while after writing that, because that's fucked up. Like, beating and torturing your kids is one thing, but humiliation is a whole other level, especially when you're a
Humiliation,
teenage girl.
humiliation is like the one thing in my mind that is overlooked a lot by parents.
I
And
agree.
that because of that, I focus so fucking hard on with my kids. I always have since the day they were born. Like my children will fart loudly and laugh because I do that in front of them with them
Everybody fucking
because
farts.
when I was little, and nobody's perfect. I'm not saying my parents were bad parents. My parents were very young parents, and they probably needed to learn a little more before they
Of
raised children.
course.
But I turned
Yeah.
out fine. It's fine. We learn and grow. And now that they're adult, much older adults and still raising children, they would never do these things. They've learned from their mistakes as well. But I remember being little and being fucking embarrassed.
About
And it's
farting.
an awful about farting, about not knowing something. Like when my parents laughed because I didn't know something, or laughed because I farted in public,
Mm.
or they laughed at me, and I felt so ashamed that I literally from fucking 7, 8, 9, 10 years old told myself, when I grow up my children will never feel this way. Vividly in my mind, there is this memory that I have that makes me think of this the most, and it's not even that fucking embarrassing, honestly. My mom let me dye my hair when I was in second grade. It's the first time I was allowed to dye my hair. It was just the tips, but it was so cool. I was so excited. And I had to, wash my hair to get the stuff out. I got in the shower, washed my hair, and then you have like that conditioner that's supposed to like
Mm-hmm.
revitalize your hair because it's
Yeah.
like box dye or whatever.
Yeah. That
And I
conditioner
asked my
that's supposed
mom,
to save your hair from
right.
whatever you just did to it.
I asked my mom, how do I use this? What do I do? And she's like, use it like conditioner. Just put it in your hair. And I'm like, but I don't know how. Like, what do I do? And she's like, just use it like conditioner. And I'm like, Mom, I don't know how to use conditioner. No one ever taught me. I don't
Yeah.
know what. And I was like crying, like
You're
I,
7.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm literally crying, like I don't know how. I don't know what to do. And she started laughing, and she's like, you didn't even know how to do your hair, to wash and condition your hair. And I'm like, oh my God. And from the moment my children started washing themselves, I gave them this is what you do. This is what it looks like on your hands. Rub it in like this. Make sure your hair's all the way wet. I like walked them through it because I was like, my mom didn't know back then how hurt I was, but I will never let my children feel that hurt and also feel like they can't tell me it hurts, because I
Yeah.
didn't want to admit to my mom. I just stood there
That your
crying in the
feelings
shower.
were hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just,
I've
anyway,
told Sierra this
humiliation
every
fucking kills me.
interaction I've had with her as a mom, but she is a fucking wonderful mom.
Thank you. I know I don't always get it right, but I have I won't let my children hurt how I hurt, and I'm sure my children will grow up and raise their children not to do the things that I made them feel.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are things that they're feeling too, but as long as we can just keep on passing down the good qualities, it'll be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
During a call to Sammy, Shelly mentioned that she had invited her friend Ron Woodsworth to live with her. He was going to go blah, 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 blah. He was going through some things and was unemployed at the time. Ron was a sassy and quick-witted man. He was short with thick glasses. He wore gold chains with Egyptian symbols.
I love
Tori
Ron.
took to him right away. I know. She even started calling him Uncle Ron. Ron was the son of Catherine and William Woodsworth. He had recently moved with his partner Gary Nielsen of 17 years to the Pacific Northwest from Southern California. His sister already lived in the area, and his parents moved there as well, so it seemed perfect for everyone. Ron's parents moved to be closer, though, because his father was very ill. Within the year, William Woodsworth died, and it hit Ron very hard.
Aww.
He lost his job because he couldn't focus, and his behavior changed drastically. He was no longer his outgoing self. He became sullen and introverted. Him and Gary broke up after a year of this, and his downward spiral would continue. He lashed out at his mother after she got rid of his cats, and he made vile threats toward her, claiming she killed them by getting rid of them. Eventually, Ron was forced to foreclose on their trailer that he shared with Gary. And so this was the perfect time for Shelly to swoop in and rescue a friend. Shelly set Ron up in Sammy's old room, made sure he was comfortable as possible. She told Dave not to worry, he was gay, and he would be working around the yard in exchange for living there. Anything that Shelly asked for, Ron replied with, "Yes, Shelly dear," and her initial warm welcome wore away very quickly. If Ron didn't do things up to Shelly's standard, she would verbally insult him and hit him over the head. The tone of voice she used with him was diminishing, like he was stupid, and she used slurs, homosexual slurs, towards him as well.
Towards her so-called friend.
Tori hated that Shelly treated Ron like this, but as sad as it was, with Shelly's focus on Ron, things were easier for Tori. This is exactly the way that Nikki, Sammy, and Shane felt about Kathy. Also, like Kathy, Shelly fed Ron all sorts of concoctions of drugs from her medicine cabinet. Tori thought of him as the smartest man in the world, but before she knew it, it was like he wasn't even there anymore. He was a shell of himself. Shelly only fed him toast and water twice a day, and he wasn't allowed to eat with her and Tori downstairs. She took away Ron's belongings and made him sleep on the floor downstairs, and she made him use the bathroom outside. Ron's old friend from the military, Sandra, moved to the area and frequently tried to get in touch with him. Shelly would answer the phone each time, stating that he was out in the yard working or not home. After some time of this, Sandra grew tired of Shelly's excuses, demanding that Ron call her back or that she would file a missing persons report.
Good for her.
Ron did call back, claiming that he was in some deep money issues and hiding from the police. He said he was living in Shelly's attic and she was helping him.
She offered a lie, right? Too?
Yes.
That's what I thought. I was like, I don't remember reading anything about him having money troubles, but
no. This was Shelly's story. Sandra offered for Ron to come and live with her, but he declined. Eventually, Sandra received a call from Shelly saying that she was bad for Ron and she was stressing him out to just stay out of his life. So this is like one of those typical, Sandra probably felt like, okay, this woman is a bitch and she's abusing you, but you're choosing to stay there. You're telling me I'm bad for you. Figure it out yourself. I'm tired of helping you. Like, you're dumb for going back to her, kind of thing. But people in abusive relationships like this, even though it's not a sexual abuse relationship, they're literally stuck. They cannot get out. Never give up on people like that. Yeah, it just, I hate it. Not that it's Sandra's fault, but also,
no, God, no.
No matter how many times they go back, no matter how many times they defend them, they're not in the right headspace because that person has literally brainwashed them. In this case, drugged them. Like, you cannot give up.
You make excuses for their bad behavior. You defend them to people. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Shelly was doing what she always did, isolating the people in her life. She even helped to drive a wedge between Ron and his mother, Catherine, or further anyway. She sucked up to Catherine, saying that she was like a mother to her, and she would help her get Ron's behavior under control.
She's the perfect kid. Ron sucks.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Shelly was playing the other side, telling Ron how awful Catherine was and that she called him ungrateful and worthless. Dave, having a little bit of a conscience, literally tried to pay Ron $270 to just leave their house, fearing for what might happen to him.
Keep in mind, this is the 90s, guys, and Dave worked his ass off and had no money because of Shelly. So that's a lot. And still was
like, please just leave. Get out. But Ron remained loyal to Shelly. Shelly took away all of Ron's clothing until all he had left to work in was his underwear. She forbid Tori from speaking to him, making Ron tell her that he didn't love her. It was torture for him. He cared for Tori very much. Shelley then went on to befriend an elderly man named Mac. Uh, James McLintock was his name. They called him Mac. He was a family friend of Kathy's mother, Kay, but had no family of his own in the area. He lived in a big house all by himself and needed help. Shelley would make Ron stay there and take care of Mac. Mac would eventually assign Shelley as his power of attorney in his will. After his dog, though, he did make his dog the first one,
His
the
black
first.
lab. Yeah.
Right.
Like true king status. I'm here
Right.
for it.
Unfortunately, this was all part of Shelley's plan. She couldn't have cared less about Mac. She just wanted his house and money when he died. And Shelley would ensure this happened at an accelerated speed. While they were never able to officially approve it, it is strongly believed that Shelley had Ron push Mac down the stairs in his wheelchair while caring for him, killing him. And then the dog died of an accident shortly later. One evening, Tori awoke to shouting outside. She watched as her mother screamed at Ron. He apologized and begged for forgiveness, but she forced him to jump off the balcony. Ron landed hard on the ground, screaming in agony. His body was weak, it was cold, he didn't have on any clothes or shoes, and his body was covered in bruises. Shelley told him to get up and do it again, and again, and again, climbing the balcony and jumping off. Tori couldn't watch anymore. It was evident that Ron had broken something in his leg or his foot. Shelley was yelling at him for murdering Mac. This was the part of the story where I was like, okay, this is beyond insane. Like, this is worse torture than anything I've ever heard. Having someone jump off of a fucking balcony over and over again, landing on bare feet over and over again.
Yeah.
Like, imagine jumping off a building.
No.
Imagine jumping off a building and then climbing back and doing it again and again.
I had to wrap my head around why you thought part 2 of this book was worse until I got to this part. And I was like, oh my God. That, and we find out what happened to Shane, which the author, Greg Olson, kind of keeps vague. Again, guys, go read it. It was a great source of information for this, but what the fuck? Like,
by 2003, Ron was spindly. He could hardly walk. His teeth were gone. After a series of jumps, Shelley treated his wounds with hot water and bleach. Tori later recalled, I remember the smell of it was like the worst smell of my life. It was like the smell of bleach and decomposing flesh, like it was burning his skin off, and it was just terrible. He smelled like he was rotting, literally the smell of dying flesh. He smelled like that for a month, up until the very end. When Shelley did this, the skin on Ron's feet started to slip off, and only then did she realize that she had gone too far. She panicked and quickly tried to bandage his feet. She would tell people Ron tried to kill himself by jumping out of a tree, and that's how he had broken his ankles and why he was damaged. Why he was bandaged. He was also damaged. Ron's body had already begun shutting down, and he could not take the abuse anymore. Shelley sent him to rest and recover over at Mac's house, away from Tori. He died there of his injuries on July 22nd, 2003, but Shelley claimed he must have died from alcohol poisoning, being outside in the heat and drinking all day. Shelley called Dave and told him that he needed to return home from work and that things with Ron were not good. Dave already knew what she meant. Shelley dragged Ron's body to the pole shed where Kathy had slept, where Shane had been shot, and stuffed Ron into the freezer, where he remained for 3 days before Dave could return home. There was a burn ban in the Pacific County, so Dave could not do what he had done to Kathy and Shane. Instead, Dave dug a large hole to bury Ron, wrapping him up in tarps. He flattened the dirt out as best as he could and scattered a layer of fir branches on top. All the while this was happening, police were made aware that something was wrong, even before Mac died. Back in 2001, during a visit to see her grandmother, Nikki, crying, broke down and told Laura what had happened at the Monaghan Landing house and to Kathy. Laura said that she was both incredibly surprised and not surprised at all. Nikki wrote out everything she had told her grandmother, and together they faxed it to the Pacific County Police. Nikki was terrified of her mother finding out what she had just done, but she knew that Kathy's family deserved answers. The Pacific County Sheriff had tried to get in touch with Sammy to corroborate the story, but she never called him back. Sammy was terrified to talk and still being guilted by her mother. Shelly always told Sammy if she ever said anything about what happened, they would take Tori away and it would ruin her life. But it was 2003 now, and Sammy was about to find out just how important it would be to get Tori out of that living situation. Sammy took Tori on a little day trip to Bellingham, but didn't tell her why until they were almost there. They were going to see Nikki. Sammy was under the impression that Tori was under the impression that Nikki hated her and that she was supposed to hate Nikki, too, because of all the lies that they were fed by her mother.
Did I write
But
Sammy?
it might have been me, honestly, when I changed things. I don't know.
They all end with Y or I, sorry.
Yeah. But the lies would soon be clear. During this visit, the sisters would bond over the horrors inflicted by their mother, and Sammy and Nikki would have their worst fears realized. That Shelly did this to Tori as well. When Tori admitted that she thought that Ron was dead, the girls made a plan to get her out of the house as soon as possible. Tori snooped around the property for any sign of Ron when she returned home and found his things and the bloody bandages from his feet inside the pole building, confirming her suspicions, and Sammy was now ready to talk to police. On August 6th, 2003, they drove down to the Pacific County Sheriff's Station to tell their story. First, a deputy appeared to take Tori into protective custody. She told investigators her story as well at only 14 years old.
I'm glad that's the first step.
Right. When Dave Knotek arrived at the station to see his daughter, he consented to an interview that would set his arrest and his wife's into motion. Investigators were able to obtain a search warrant after this. Shelly was arrested at Mac's house. In February of 2004, 6 months after Dave's arrest, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in the case of Shane Watson and guilty to unlawful disposal of human remains and rendering criminal assistance. 10 months after Shelly's arrest, she entered an Alford plea of the charges against her, which we know from the West Memphis 3 case allows her to technically plead guilty while still asserting innocence. She was sentenced to 22 years.
Not long enough.
No. Shelly blamed Nikki and Shane for Kathy's death. Nothing was ever her fault. Nikki, Sammy, and Tori lived wonderful lives after this, and still are, using their bond to get through their trauma. They all married and had kids of their own, vowing to never be the kind of mother Shelly was. Dave Knotek was released from prison in 2016. The only thing that keeps him going is the relationship he has with his daughters.
I'm so glad that they all chose to still have a relationship with him after this.
I agree. And he also helped in writing this book.
Oh, did he? I didn't realize that.
Unfortunately, that leads us to the last point, which we did mention in the first part. Shelly is out of jail as well. She is walking free, living her life. She was released for good behavior and time served in 2022.
Which is
have you looked up where is
ago.
she now?
Yeah, I did.
Does it tell like her job or anything?
Not really, no.
Disgusting. I don't even know what to say about this woman. I feel like we've talked about her too much.
And it feels extra long because we had a week-long delay in between our recordings, which normally, wouldn't have happened. But I agree with you in the sense that, like, I was literally thinking about editing this episode and I was like, I need to just be done with Shelly Knotek.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot considering the monsters that we have covered on this show. Like,
Yeah.
it affected me more than I thought it was going to. It took me a whole month to read that book.
Yeah.
And I like to have more time to write notes and plan for our next serial killer. And I'm like, like Sierra.
It's such a rough case. Like, I, on one hand, I'm like, more people probably don't know about it slash cover it because it's so fucking bad.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, she's fucking out and
Yeah.
people should
Need to know
probably
about that.
spread awareness.
Sure.
Yeah, because people, I mean, maybe she's rehabilitated. Honestly, I fucking hope she is. I hope she's rehabilitated.
But I
But
can't
on the other
imagine the
hand,
fear that her kids feel
yeah,
knowing that she's out.
that was the point of them writing this book was to get the message out there because they knew her parole was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, people need to know
This
that
is
this
what
woman
happened to us.
exists.
Yeah.
She is so manipulative that she could be doing this again to anybody anywhere. And they wouldn't realize it until it's already happening.
And now
She's
she
so
looks
good
like a
at it.
harmless old lady.
Right.
So it's going to be even easier for her. I don't know
Yeah,
if she is
it's
listening to
terrifying.
this podcast. I really don't care. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, again, they wanted this book to be released because they wanted people to know about her. I think you should definitely read the book, but this is our part in helping spread their message. Know
absolutely.
about her. She's
That and
fucking out
like
there.
the fact that she did this to their kid, like her kids and to her friends, like,
Yeah.
especially, like, I'm so glad that Ron's remains were able to be recovered because he was buried on the property. But it's
Mm-hmm.
heartbreaking to me to think that Shane and Kathy are just spread. Like,
Yeah.
they are never going to be put to rest.
Yeah. It's awful.
Yeah.
Evil is among us.
I was so close to calling this episode or these episodes, yes, Shelly dear. But I like
Oh.
literally could not even bring myself to write it. So I called it Crazy Shelly instead because that's what she
Yeah.
was known as around the neighborhood.
Right.
But yeah, just awful. So rest in peace to Kathy Loreno, Shane Watson, and Ron Woodsworth.
Yeah.
I hope that no
And
one ever
Mac.
has to. And Mac, yeah, because without, I think you took that part out, but they believe that Ron likely
Oh yeah, pushed him down the stairs.
pushed him
Yeah, I
down the
said that.
stairs. Oh, you did? Okay. Clearly, I was disassociating mid-episode.
Yes. Understandable.
I literally, well, Sierra and I are very alike, but I couldn't tell which parts I wrote and which parts she wrote. And I was just like the whole time.
Yeah.
So we love you guys and thank you so much for listening. A couple people did reach out to us and say how close to home that this actually happened
Oh,
where they
no.
live for our
Yeah.
listeners and fellow podcasters, which is crazy. And they shared the episode and were encouraging us to, keep our coverage up. So that's really sweet because it is hard to talk about. So
Yeah.
do you have anything that you're looking forward to or exciting stuff coming?
Yes, I do have an exciting thing to say. So
Guys, she didn't have to consult her planner.
I got my book from the library.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited about it. Map of the Otherlands. This is the second part, Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett. This is the second part of the other book that I read, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies.
Again,
And
guys, go listen to Bitch and Wine.
I've heard that this one is even more bantery and like quick-witted than the first one. So I'm very excited about it.
I'm obsessed.
Yeah. I'm so excited.
That is exciting. I like that. I haven't written in my planner for a week, so that's awkward. But I am really just thankful for how loving and supportive Kevin is of this podcast. He literally brought me a steak dinner while I was recording this.
Amazing.
So, yeah, sometimes our schedules get a bit hectic, but we're very thankful for all of your support, including the support of our beautiful twisted humans, like I'm Tina Bina on Apple Podcasts from the US, who says, so much fun, great content, keep up the great work, ladies, with a bunch of hearts. And I saw that she recently subscribed to our YouTube channel, so she's one of our watchers.
Nice.
So thank you so much for leaving that review. We've gotten kind of a flood of them lately, and I'm really hoping that that keeps going because it boosts us as a recommended show to other people. So,
yeah,
because we don't want you guys to have to keep yelling on the street to people. It's getting weird, okay?
it's getting weird.
But thank you so, so much. And if you're craving more Twisted content, you can go and listen to our super fun Bitch and Wine talking about books and all sorts of stuff this month. We have a lot of other true crime content on there as well if you're looking for something spooky. And no, it's okay. I was waiting for you to come back. And we love you lots. We will see you next week for my haunted episode that we're recording after this. And in the meantime,
Keep it twisted.
Twisted and Uncorked is a proud member of Weirding Way Media. Hosted and produced by Sierra Zorn and Alicia Watson. If you like the show, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you are listening now. It really is the best way to spread the word. You can check out all things Twisted on our website, twistedanduncorked.com, and we will see you next Tuesday for a brand new episode.